They left her on the side of the road like garbage. Her spine was shattered, her body broken, and her life as a struggling waitress was effectively over. But the men who beat Anna Vance and tossed her into the mud didn't know who was driving down that lonely highway 10 minutes later. They didn't know that Alistair Thorne, the vampire king who has ruled the shadows for 600 years, was about to stop his car. He wasn't just looking for a victim. He was about to find the one woman he thought died centuries ago. And when he finds out who did this to her, the world will burn. You need to hear this story. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall. It hammered against the earth, trying to wash away the sins of the city. For Alistair Thorne, the sound was nothing more than white noise. He sat in the back of his armored Maybach, staring out at the blurred streaks of streetlights. Being the king of the Vampire Council, the apex of the night, meant that very little surprised him anymore. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had seen humanity go from horse-drawn carriages to nuclear weapons. He was bored. "Drive faster, Marcus," Alistair murmured, his voice low but commanding. It was a voice that could freeze blood in veins. "The storm is severe, my lord." His driver, a ghoul who had served him since the 1920s, replied nervously, "The visibility on this back road is near zero." "I said faster." Alistair rubbed his temples. The council meeting had been exhausting. Territorial disputes, younger vampires getting sloppy with their feeding. It was all so petty. He just wanted to return to Blackwood Manor, his fortress of solitude, and drink a vintage 1945 Sanvez laced with O negative and forget the world existed. Suddenly, Marcus slammed on the brakes. The heavy car hydroplaned slightly before screeching to a halt, the tires tearing up the wet asphalt. Alistair didn't move in his seat. "Marcus, if you value your existence, explain why we have stopped there." "There is something on the road, sire. A bundle. I think it's a body." Alistair sighed, buttoning his charcoal suit jacket. He didn't care about human accidents. They were fragile creatures, constantly breaking themselves. But the scent hit him before the door even opened. It wasn't just the metallic tang of fresh blood. It was fear. Pungent, terrified, hopeless fear. And beneath that, a scent like vanilla and old books. A scent that triggered a memory so old, Alistair felt a crack in his frozen heart. He opened the door, ignoring the umbrella Marcus offered. The rain soaked his dark hair instantly. He walked onto the road, his Italian leather shoes, stepping into puddles of oil and water. There, illuminated by the harsh white beams of the headlights, lay a woman. She was a mess of tangled brunette hair and a cheap, torn waitress uniform. The name tag pinned to her chest was cracked, but he could read the name. The Rusty Spoon Diner. She was lying at an unnatural angle. Her legs were twisted in a way that legs should never be twisted. Her face was swollen, bruised, purple and black, and her hands were scraped raw, as if she had tried to drag herself across the pavement before her body gave out. Alistair knelt beside her. The rain was freezing, but she was burning up with fever and shock. "Human," he said softly. She didn't move. Her breathing was shallow, a wet rattle in her chest. She had been beaten brutally, systematically. This wasn't a hit and run. This was a message. He reached out his pale, cold hand, brushing the wet hair from her face. He intended to check for a pulse, perhaps call an ambulance anonymously and leave. He was not her savior. He was a predator. But then the lightning flashed, illuminating her face clearly. For the split second she opened her eyes. They were green, emerald green with flecks of gold. Alistair froze. For 600 years he had not felt fear. He had not felt shock, but now his unbeating heart seemed to slam against his ribs. He knew those eyes. He had painted those eyes in a diary in 1420. He had seen those eyes close in death as the plague took his wife Isabella centuries ago. Isabella. he whispered, his voice trembling. The woman's lips parted, blood bubbling at the corner of her mouth. She couldn't focus on him. She whispered one word, broken and weak. Please. Alistista looked down at her body. He used his vampiric vision, scanning her anatomy. It was worse than it looked. Her spine was severed at the lumbar region. Her pelvis was shattered. She was paralyzed. Even if she lived, she would never walk again. She was broken beyond human repair. A rage, hot and volcanic, erupted in Alistista's chest. It wasn't the cold anger of a king. It was the feral protective instinct of a mate. He scooped her up in his arms. She was impossibly light, frail from malnutrition even before the beating. Her head lolled against his chest, staining his expensive silk shirt with mud and blood. He didn't care. He would have burned the shirt and the car and the whole world right now. "Marcus!" he roared, the sound echoing like thunder, terrifying the night creatures in the woods. "Open the door! Call Dr. Sterling! Tell him to prepare the trauma unit at the manor, now." "Sire, is she food?" Marcus asked, confused by his master's panic. Alistista turned his eyes toward his driver. His irises had bled from their usual icy blue to a demonic crimson, fangs elongated, sharp and deadly, snapping down over his lip. "She is not food," Alistista snarled, holding the broken woman tighter against him. "She is the queen." The drive to Blackwood Manor usually took 40 minutes. Marcus made it in 18. Anna Vance, that was the name on her cracked ID card found in her pocket, floated in and out of consciousness. The pain was a white-hot universe of its own. She remembered the headlights. She remembered the men in the alley behind the diner. She remembered the sound of the baseball bat hitting her back, a sickening crack that had disconnected her legs from her brain instantly. She remembered them laughing. "Tell your boyfriend he shouldn't have crossed the Shadow Syndicate." Boyfriend. She didn't have a boyfriend. She had gone on 2 dates with a guy named Kyle, a charming architect, but she had broken it off when he started asking weird questions about her blood type and her family history. Now there was only darkness, the smell of expensive cologne, and a coldness that felt safe. When the car stopped, she felt herself being lifted. The movement sent a jolt of agony through her shattered spine, and she screamed, a raw, guttural sound. "Shh! I have you. I have you, Anna." A velvet voice whispered near her ear. She forced her eyes open. A man was carrying her. He was pale, devastatingly handsome, with jawlines sharp enough to cut glass, and eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light of the mansion's entryway. He looked like an angel of death. "Am I dead?" she thought. "Is this hell?" They burst through double oak doors. The interior was vast, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, ancient tapestries. A team of people in white coats was waiting. "Put her on the gurney, my lord!" A man with greying hair and wire-rimmed glasses shouted. This was Dr. Sterling, the best surgeon in the vampire world, a man who could stitch a severed head back on if given enough time. Alistista laid her down gently, his hands lingering on her shoulders as the medical team swarmed her. Scissors cut away her uniform. IVs were stabbed into her bruised arms. "Status," Alistista barked, pacing the room like a caged tiger. "Multiple fractures," Sterling recited rapidly. "Internal bleeding in the abdomen, collapsed lung, but the primary concern is the T12 vertebrae. It's crushed, sire. The spinal cord is severed. She is paralyzed from the waist down." The words hung in the air, paralyzed. Alistista stopped pacing. He stared at Anna's pale face. She was unconscious now, sedated by the morphine drip. "Fix her," Alistista commanded. "I can repair the organs, I can set the bones, but the spine—" Sterling hesitated. "Human medicine cannot fix a severed cord, and if we give her vampire blood now, in this state, the transformation might kill her. Her body is too weak to handle the turning. It would tear her apart." "I did not say turn her," Alistair hissed. "I said fix her. Use the regenerative mists. Use the sanguine crystals. I don't care what it costs." "That is forbidden magic for a human, sire," Sterling warned quietly. "The Council—" Alistair grabbed Sterling by the throat, lifting him a foot off the ground. "I am the Council. If she dies, or if she wakes up in pain she cannot bear, I will mount your head on the gates of this estate. Do you understand?" "Yes, yes, my lord," Sterling choked out. Alistair dropped him. He walked back to the gurney. He reached into her pocket, which had been emptied onto a side table. There was a crumpled receipt for rent overdue, a picture of a cat, and a name tag, Anna. He ran his thumb over the name. "Who did this to you, Anna?" He whispered to the sleeping woman. He walked out of the medical bay and into the hallway where Marcus was waiting. The sadness in Alistair's face vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating brutality. "Marcus." "Yes, sire?" "Take her phone, unlock it. Find out who Kyle is. Find out where she worked. Find out who was on shift tonight." Alistair adjusted his cuffs, though his hands were shaking with rage. "And summon the Shadow Guard. I want the streets of this city swept. If a rat sneezes in an alleyway tonight, I want to know about it." "War? What are you going to do, sire?" Alistair looked at the door where the woman with his dead wife's eyes was fighting for her life. "I'm going to hunt." As Alistair walked toward his armory, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't random. Anna wasn't just a victim of a mugging. The specific nature of the injury, the paralyzing blow, was a tactic used by the Vulov clan, his ancient enemies. They preferred to leave their victims alive, but broken as a warning. But why her? Why a waitress? Unless they knew before he did that she was the reincarnation. If the Vulovs had touched her to get to him, Alistair vowed that he would not just kill them, he would make them beg for the mercy of hell. Back in the medical room, Anna's heart monitor beeped steadily. Beneath the bandages, a strange glowing mark on her shoulder, a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon, began to pulse, faintly reacting to the vampire magic filling the room. She wasn't just a human, and she wasn't just a waitress. She was the key to a war that was about to tear the supernatural world apart. Consciousness returned to Anna, not as a flood, but as a slow, agonizing drip. The first thing she noticed was the smell. It wasn't the stale grease of the diner, nor the mildew of her tiny studio apartment. It was lavender, expensive mahogany, and the crisp ozone scent of a storm. She blinked her eyes open. Above her, a ceiling painted with Renaissance-style cherubs and storm clouds stared back. She was lying in a bed that felt like a cloud, wrapped in sheets of black silk that felt cool against her feverish skin. "Where am I?" She tried to sit up. "I wouldn't do that just yet, Miss Vance." The voice was clinical, soft, and came from the corner of the room. Anna turned her head, a movement that sent a spike of nausea rolling through her gut. A man with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses was adjusting a drip on an IV stand next to the bed. This was Dr. Sterling. "Who are you?" Anna croaked. Her throat felt like she had swallowed glass. Where is the rain?" "You are at Blackwood Manor," Sterling said gently. "I am Dr. Sterling. You were found on the side of Route 9. You've been in and out of a coma for 3 days." Panic began to rise in her chest, a cold tide. She remembered the headlights. She remembered the bat. She remembered the crunch. "I need to go," Anna whispered, her hands scrabbling at the silk sheets. "I have a shift. If I miss a shift, I get fired. My rent." "Your rent is irrelevant now," Sterling said, his voice carrying a heavy sadness. "Anna, please listen to me carefully." Anna stopped moving. The look in the doctor's eyes scared her more than the men in the alley. "You sustained severe trauma." Sterling began removing his glasses and wiping them on his coat. internal bleeding, which we have stopped. 3 broken ribs, a fractured ulna, but the blow to your back was catastrophic. Anna stared at him. She tried to wiggle her toes. She sent the command from her brain to her feet. Move. Just move. Nothing happened. It was as if her body ended at her waist. There was no pain in her legs. There was simply nothing, a void, a terrifying silence where her nerves used to be. "Why can't I feel my legs?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "The T12 vertebrae was crushed," Sterling said softly. "The spinal cord has been severed. Anna, you are paralyzed from the waist down." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The silence in the room was deafening. Paralyzed. She was 24 years old. She was a waitress. She had no family, no money, no insurance, and now she was half a body. "No!" she gasped, tears hot and fast spilling down her cheeks. "No, you're lying. I'm just numb. It's the medicine. Wake them up. Fix it." She began to thrash her upper body, twisting violently, dragging the dead weight of her legs. The IV line tugged dangerously. "Anna, stop! You will hurt yourself!" Sterling moved to restrain her, but the door to the bedroom slammed open. Elistista Thorne stood in the doorway. He had discarded his suit jacket. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the pale, marble-like skin of his throat. His presence sucked the air out of the room. He didn't look like a man. He looked like a storm contained in skin. "Leave us," Elistista commanded. "Sire, she is hysterical. Her heart rate is—" "I said, leave us." Sterling bowed his head and hurriedly exited, closing the heavy oak door with a soft click. Elistista walked to the side of the bed. He moved with a predatory grace, silent and fluid. He looked down at Anna, who was sobbing into her hands, her body shaking with the force of her grief. He sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't touch her at first. He just let his presence settle over her. Vampires had an aura, a glamour that could induce fear or calm. Elistista projected a heavy blanket-like calm. "Look at me, Anna." Anna lifted her head, eyes swollen and exhausted. When she met his gaze, she froze. His eyes were ice in color, but burning with a frightening, focused fire. "You're the man from the road," she whispered, "the one standing in the rain." "I am Elistista Thorne," he said quietly, "and you are safe here. Nothing will touch you again." "Safe?" Anna let out a sharp, broken laugh. "I can't walk. I have nothing. My life is over. You should have left me there." Elistista's jaw tensed. He took her hand, cold, steady, undeniable. "I do not make mistakes," he said, "and I did not save you by accident. You see your paralysis as an ending. I see it as an obstacle, one I intend to eliminate." Anna stared. "You're talking like a madman." "Maybe," he murmured, lifting her hand and brushing a cold kiss over her knuckles. "But I have knowledge, power, and resources beyond what you can imagine. If the world broke you, I will rebuild you, even if I must rip heaven apart to do it." "Why me?" she whispered. "I'm nobody." Elistista looked at her, really looked at the defiance beneath her fear, the strength beneath her misery. "Because when I found you, you didn't beg," he said. "You asked for help. I haven't answered a prayer in 600 years. I decided to answer yours." He turned to the window. "Rest, eat, recover. Soon the man who did this to you will be brought here, and I want you fully awake when he screams." While Anna slept, Elistista drove into Seattle's industrial underbelly with Marcus beside him. "We traced the burner phone," Marcus reported. "Warehouse in Sector 4. Elistista's grip tightened. "Neutral territory. Someone's playing with fire." "There's more," Marcus added. "Kyle's texts. They weren't romantic. He asked about her sleep, diet, medical history, anemia." Elistista's eyes darkened. "A blood trafficker screaming." They reached the warehouse. One kick sent the steel door flying. 3 men inside, one table. No time to react. Alistair dropped the first before he could lift his weapon. Marcus pinned the second. Alistair sat across from the third, smiling calmly. "You have something of mine," he said softly. "Give me a name." "It was Kyle," the thug blurted. "He said she was a reject, not pure enough for the harvest. We were supposed to dispose of her, make it look like a mugging." Alistair leaned in, eyes glowing like a furnace. "Good," he said. "Then you can tell me everything." Alistair froze. Reject, harvest. This confirmed his darkest suspicion. The Vulov clan was harvesting humans with specific genetic markers, descendants of the ancient lines. They were trying to breed a super-vampire, a daywalker. If Anna was a reject, it meant they had tested her and found her lacking. But they were wrong. Alistair had smelled her blood. It wasn't lacking, it was potent, it was royal. "Where is Kyle?" Alistair asked, his voice a low rumble. "The Sky Lounge," the thug wept. "He's meeting the buyer tonight. He's an architect. That's his cover. His real name is Kirill Vulov." Alistair stood up. The name hung in the air like toxic smoke. A Vulov in his city, dating his queen, breaking her spine because she didn't fit their sick experiment. Alistair turned to Marcus. "Burn this place down, and the men, sire. Leave them inside." Alistair walked out into the cool night air as the warehouse erupted in flames behind him. He took out his phone and dialed Dr. Sterling. "Sterling," Alistair said, watching the fire reflect in the polished black paint of his car. "Yes, my lord." "Prepare the guest wing. I'm bringing home a prisoner tonight, and tell Anna." Alistair paused, looking up at the moon. "Tell her that the hunt is over. The war has just begun." He hung up. Kirill Vulov was playing architect at a high-end bar downtown, sipping champagne, likely celebrating the disposal of trash. He had no idea that the Reaper was coming for him. Alistair got into the car. He checked his reflection in the rear-view mirror. He looked composed, elegant, human. But inside, the beast was clawing at the bars of its cage. Tonight Seattle would bleed, and he would paint a portrait of vengeance so vivid that the Vulov clan would tremble for another century. Alistair revved the engine. He had a date with an architect. The Sky Lounge was a glass jewel box suspended 50 stories above Seattle. It was the kind of place where a cocktail cost more than Anna made in a week, and the clientele consisted of tech moguls, politicians, and the undercover monsters who pulled their strings. Kirill Vulov sat in a corner booth, nursing a whiskey. He was handsome in a sharp, modern way, blonde hair, slicked back, wearing a designer turtleneck that cost $2. He looked like a successful architect. In reality, he was a lieutenant in the Vulov vampire clan, a lineage known for their brutality. He checked his watch. The disposal team should have reported in by now. The waitress, the genetic dud, should be dead, and the evidence burned. "You're checking the time, Kirill. Do you have somewhere to be?" The voice didn't come from the empty seat across from him. It seemed to vibrate through the glass of the window, through the table, through Kirill's very bones. Kirill froze. The ambient noise of the bar, the jazz music, the clinking glasses, the laughter died instantly. The humans in the room stopped moving. Caught in a collective glamour, a mass hypnosis that only an ancient could cast. Alistair Thorne stepped out from the shadows near the bar. He didn't walk. He flowed, darkness clinging to his heels like a cape. Kirill's heart, which beat only once every minute, stuttered. He stood up, knocking over his whiskey. "Lord Thorne," Kirill said, his voice tight. "I didn't know you frequented common establishments." "I don't," Alistair said, closing the distance between them in a blink. He stood comfortably, hands in his pockets, looking bored, but his eyes were 2 chips of burning red ice. "I usually dine at home. But tonight I found something distasteful on my plate. I came to return it." "I don't know what you mean," Kirill lied, glancing toward the exit. The distance was 50 feet. He'd never make it. Alistair smiled. It was a smile devoid of mirth, showing just the tips of his elongated canines. "You broke a toy of mine, Kirill, a little waitress, Anna." Kirill's face went pale. She was a nobody, a stray. We were just screening her for the program. She failed the markers. We let her go." "Let her go?" Alistair's voice dropped to a whisper that sounded like a tectonic plate shifting. "You paralyzed her. You severed her spine and left her in the mud like roadkill. She was a reject." Kirill snapped, his arrogance momentarily overriding his fear. "Her blood was wrong. It was too hot. It would have poisoned the supply. We did you a favor by culling the herd, Thorn. You should be thanking me." Alistair moved. It happened so fast that even Kirill's vampire reflexes couldn't track it. One moment, Alistair was standing there. The next, his hand was wrapped around Kirill's throat, lifting him off the floor. Alistair slammed the Vulov lieutenant into the reinforced glass window. The impact spiderwebbed the glass, a terrifying crack echoing through the silent room. "She is not a reject," Alistair hissed, his face inches from Kirill's. "She is the reincarnation, and you, little architect, have just declared war on the Thorn bloodline." Kirill clawed at Alistair's hand, gasping, "You can't kill me here. The truce." "I'm not going to kill you here," Alistair agreed. He tightened his grip, crushing Kirill's windpipe just enough to incapacitate him, but not decapitate him. He leaned in close to Kirill's ear. "I'm going to take you to her. I'm going to let her decide which pieces of you we keep." Alistair turned to the room of frozen humans. He snapped his fingers. "You saw nothing. The architect had too much to drink and was escorted out. Go back to your lives." The music resumed. The laughter restarted. The humans blinked, confused for a microsecond, and then continued their conversations, completely ignoring the fact that the Vampire King was dragging a limp body out the service exit. Outside, Marcus had the trunk of the Aston Martin open. Alistair threw Kirill inside like a bag of mulch and slammed the lid. "To the manor, Marcus," Alistair said, wiping his hands on a silk handkerchief. "And call Sterling. Tell him I want the dungeon prepped. No sedatives for our guest. I want him to feel every second of his stay." Consciousness did not return to Anna Vance all at once. It came in jagged, disjointed fragments like shards of glass catching the light in a dark room. First, there was the smell. It was a rich, intoxicating blend of crushed velvet, ozone, and something distinctly medicinal. Sharp antiseptic cutting through the heaviness of ancient dust. It didn't smell like the hospital. It didn't smell like the diner. It smelled like money and age. Second came the sensation of touch. She felt the silk sheets against her arms, cool and fluid like water. She felt the softness of a pillow that seemed to swallow her head, but then her mind drifted downward, seeking the familiar feedback of her body, and hit a terrifying, silent wall. She tried to wiggle her toes. It was a reflex, a morning habit, to stretch out the cramps from waiting tables for 10 hours a day. Nothing happened. She frowned, her eyes still heavy with sedation. "Focus," she told herself. "Move your left foot." She sent the command from her brain, a screaming impulse to move, to flex, to kick. But the signal traveled down her spine and vanished into a void at her waist. It was as if her body simply ended there. There was no pain in her legs. There was no tingling. There was only a heavy, wooden absence. Anna's eyes snapped open. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in her chest. She gasped, scrambling to push herself up, but her core muscles were weak, and a sharp, hot agony flared in her lower back, forcing a cry from her throat. "Careful!" a voice murmured from the shadows. "You will tear the sutures!" Anna froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She turned her head, her vision swimming in a blur of gold and mahogany. The room was vast. It wasn't a hospital room. It was a chamber, fit for a king. The ceiling vanished into shadows high above, painted with scenes of storms and angels. Heavy velvet curtains blocked out the world, and the only light came from a fireplace where logs burned with an unnatural blue flame. Standing near the foot of the bed was a man in a white coat. He looked exhausted, wiping wire-rimmed glasses on a handkerchief. This was Dr. Sterling. "Where am I?" Anna croaked. Her voice was a ruin, scratchy and dry. Why can't I move my legs?" Sterling replaced his glasses and looked at her with a pity that chilled her blood more than the cold rain had. "You are at Blackwood Manor, Miss Vance," Sterling said softly. "You are safe now, but there were complications." "Complications?" Anna's breath hitched. "I remember the headlights. I remember the men. They hit me." "They did more than hit you," Sterling said, his voice clinical but laced with regret. "The trauma to your spinal column was catastrophic. The T12 vertebrae was crushed on impact. We did everything we could to stabilize the area, to stop the internal bleeding, to save your life." He paused, and the silence stretched until it felt like a physical weight pressing on Anna's chest. "And," she whispered, "the spinal cord is severed." "Anna," Sterling said, "you are paralyzed from the waist down. It is permanent. Human medicine has no cure for this." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Paralyzed. The word echoed in her mind louder than the crackling fire. She was 24. She was a waitress living paycheck to paycheck. Her entire life relied on her ability to move, to work, to hustle. If she couldn't walk, she couldn't work. If she couldn't work, she starved. "No!" she gasped, shaking her head. Tears, hot and stinging, flooded her eyes. "No, you're wrong. It's the drugs. It's the shock. I just need to wake up." She grabbed the silk sheets and ripped them back. Her legs were there, pale, bruised, wrapped in bandages, but they looked like they belonged to a mannequin. She struck her own thigh with her fist, hard. She felt the impact in her hand, but her leg felt nothing. "No!" she screamed, a raw, animal sound of grief. She struck her legs again and again. "Wake up, move! Please, just move! Miss Vance, stop, you are hurting yourself." Sterling rushed forward, trying to restrain her hands. "Let me go!" she sobbed, thrashing against him. "Let me die! If I can't walk, just let me die!" The heavy oak doors to the bedroom slammed open with a force that shook the walls. "Enough!" The single word was spoken softly, but it carried the weight of a thunderclap. The air in the room instantly grew heavy, charged with static electricity. Anna froze, her fist raised to strike her dead legs again. She looked toward the door. Alistair Thorne stood there. He had discarded the suit jacket he wore on the road. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the marble-pale skin of his throat. His sleeves were rolled up, showing forearms that looked like they were carved from granite. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. They were blue, an impossible, glowing, glacial blue that seemed to see right through her skin to the terrified soul beneath. "Leave us, Sterling," Alistair commanded, not taking his eyes off Anna. "Sire, she is hysterical," Sterling warned, backing away. "Her heart rate is dangerous." "I said, leave us." Sterling bowed his head and hurried out the door, clicking shut behind him, leaving Anna alone with the monster who had saved her. Alistair didn't move at first. He stood by the door watching her. He looked terrifying, beautiful, and utterly alien. "You're the man from the road," Anna whispered, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "The man in the rain." "I am Alistair Thorne," he said. He walked toward the bed. He didn't walk like a human. He moved with a fluid, predatory grace, making no sound on the hardwood floor. "And you, Anna, are not going to die. I did not pull you from the mud, just to watch you give up because your legs are broken." "They aren't broken," Anna spat, her fear turning into defensive anger. "They're dead. Did you hear him? I'm paralyzed. I have no money, no family, and now I'm half a person. You should have left me there." Alistair stopped at the edge of the bed. His jaw tightened. A flash of anger crossed his face. Not at her, she realized, but for her. "You are not half a person," Alistair said, his voice dropping to a velvet rumble. "You are the only person who matters." He sat on the edge of the mattress. The mattress dipped under his weight. He reached out and took her hand. His skin was shockingly cold, like touching winter itself, but the grip was solid, anchoring. "Why?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. "Why me? I'm a waitress at a diner called the Rusty Spoon. I have a cat named Miso and $40 in my bank account. Why is a man who lives in a castle, who drives $1 million car, acting like you are the queen of the world?" Alistair finished for her. He raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through her arm that made her breath hitch. 600 years ago, Alistair began, his eyes searching hers. "I lost the only thing I ever loved. Her name was Isabella. She died of a plague I couldn't stop." I watched the light go out of her eyes, green eyes with flecks of gold exactly like yours. Anna pulled her hand back slightly. "So that's it. I look like your dead wife. That's why you saved me. I'm a replacement." "No," Alistair said fiercely. "Not a replacement, a return." He stood up and paced to the window, looking out at the storm raging outside. "I am not a human, Anna. I think you know that. I think you felt it when I picked you up." Anna swallowed. She had felt it. The cold skin, the speed, the way the shadows seemed to bend around him. "You're a vampire," she whispered. "Aren't you?" Alistair turned back to her. He opened his mouth, and for a split second his fangs elongated, sharp white needles, before retracting. "I am the king of them," he corrected. "And in our world souls are not extinguished. They cycle. I have waited 6 centuries for your soul to find a new vessel. And when I saw you on that road, I felt you. It wasn't just your face. It was the song of your blood." Anna stared at him. It sounded insane. It sounded like a dark fairy tale, but looking at him, she felt a pull in her chest that she couldn't explain, a sense of familiarity, a sense of home. "But there is something else," Alistair said, his expression darkening. "Something that doesn't fit." He walked to the door and opened it. "Sterling, get in here, bring the sample." Dr. Sterling scurried back into the room, holding a silver tray. On the tray was a glass vial containing a dark red liquid, Anna's blood, and a syringe containing a glowing, viscous black fluid. "What is that?" Anna asked, eyeing the needle. "We need to show you what you are," Alistair said. He nodded to Sterling. "Miss Vance," Sterling said nervously, his hands shaking slightly. "When we ran your blood panel for surgery, we found anomalies, strange markers. Usually if I mix human blood with vampire essence," he pointed to the black syringe, "the human blood is consumed. It turns dark, it dies. But yours—" Alistair stepped closer to the bed, his eyes intense. "Watch!" Sterling uncapped the vial of Anna's blood. He positioned the syringe of vampire essence over it and squeezed a single drop of the black fluid into the red. Hiss. The reaction was instantaneous and violent. The moment the black drop hit Anna's blood, the vial didn't turn dark. It flared. A bright golden light erupted from the liquid, swirling like a miniature sun. The liquid bubbled and boiled, emitting a hiss like steam hitting a hot pan. The vampire essence was incinerated instantly, consumed by the golden fire of her blood. Anna recoiled, pressing herself against the headboard. "What? What was that?" "That," Alistair said, looking at the glowing vial with a mixture of awe and hunger, "is why the men in the alley hurt you. That is why Kyle, the architect you were dating, was asking you questions about your health." "Kyle?" Anna blinked. "You know about Kyle?" "I know everything," Alistair said darkly. "Kyle is not an architect. His name is Kirill Vulov. He is a lieutenant of a rival clan. He was testing you, Anna, he was looking for a vessel, but when he tested you, he found this. He gestured to the glowing blood. You are a chimera, a genetic anomaly that shouldn't exist. Your blood is not food for us, Anna. It is poison. It is condensed solar energy. It burns vampire blood on contact. Anna looked at her hands, horrified. So I'm toxic? That's why they tried to kill me, because I'm a freak. They tried to kill you because they were afraid of you. Alistair roared, his control slipping. They saw a weapon that could destroy their clan, so they tried to break it before it could be used. They shattered your spine to make sure you never realized your power. Alistair moved to the bed again, grabbing her shoulders. His grip was tight, desperate. But he was wrong. You are not a freak. You are the cure. Cure? Anna looked up at him, tears streaming down her face again. Look at me, Alistair. I can't walk. How can I be a cure for anything when I can't even go to the bathroom by myself? Because your blood holds the power of the sun, Alistair said intensely. It destroys us, yes, but for me, for the primordial king, I'm strong enough to withstand the burn. And if we can harness that energy, if we can create a resonance between my blood and yours. He placed a hand gently over her heart. It won't just kill your enemies, Anna. It will regenerate you. That solar energy can rebuild bone. It can knit nerves. It can do what human medicine cannot. Anna's breath caught in her throat. Hope, fragile and terrifying, fluttered in her chest. You mean I could walk again? I mean you could fly, Alistair whispered, but we have to unlock it. And to do that, you have to trust me. You have to trust a monster. I don't see a monster, Anna whispered, surprised by her own words. She reached up, her trembling fingers brushing the sharp line of his jaw. I see the man who saved me. Alistair closed his eyes at her touch, looking for a moment like a man in pain. I will burn the world down before I let anyone touch you again, Anna. Suddenly, a deep, resonant boom shook the entire manor. Dust fell from the painted ceiling. The glass vial on the tray rattled. Sterling dropped the tray. They're here! Anna grabbed Alistair's arm. Who? Who is here? Alistair stood up, buttoning his cuffs. His face transformed. The tenderness vanished, replaced by a cold, terrifying mask of war. His eyes turned from blue to a bleeding, demonic crimson. Kirill's father, Alistair said, his voice a low growl. Victor Vulov. He has come to finish what his son started. He wants to drink your blood and become a god. Alistair walked to the heavy curtains and ripped them open. Outside, the storm was raging. But through the rain, Anna could see torches, hundreds of them, a siege line of figures standing at the gates of the estate, and in the center, a massive figure wielding a hammer that glowed with sickly green necromancy. He brought an army, Sterling whimpered. Alistair turned back to Anna. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. It wasn't a gentle kiss, it was a promise. Stay in this bed, he commanded. Sterling, if anyone enters this room who isn't me, burn them to ash. Alistair, don't go, Anna cried, reaching for him. There are too many of them. Alistair paused at the door. He looked back, and for a second the monster was gone, and only the husband, grieving his wife, remained. I lost you once, Isabella, he said softly. I will not lose you again. He turned and walked into the hallway. I'm going to kill a king. The door slammed shut, leaving Anna alone in the silence, her legs useless, her blood glowing in the vial on the floor, listening to the sound of the war beginning downstairs. The ground beneath Blackwood Manor didn't just shake, it groaned, as if the earth itself was in pain. Inside the master bedroom, Anna clutched the silk sheets, her knuckles white. The paralysis in her legs made her feel like a sitting duck trapped in a gilded cage while monsters tore at the gates. Dr. Sterling, she gasped as another boom rattled the crystal chandelier. What is happening? Sterling was busy reinforcing the door with heavy iron bars and painting sigils on the wood with a mixture of salt and ash. He looked terrified. Victor Vulov brought a battering ram. Sterling muttered, his hands shaking. And not a wooden one. He brought a gargantuan mutated ghoul, bred for siege warfare. They are trying to breach the main hall. Alistair is out there alone. He is the king. Miss Vance? He's worth 100 men. But Sterling hesitated, looking at the window where flashes of unnatural green lightning were lighting up the night. Victor is old. He uses blood magic that was outlawed in the 1600s. It rots the flesh from a distance. Anna looked at her useless legs. A fire began to kindle in her chest. Not the fever from her injuries, but a cold, hard rage. She was done being a victim. She was done being the waitress who got stiffed on tips and beaten in alleys. "Help me up," she commanded. Sterling froze. "Miss Vance, you cannot walk. If you try to move, you could sever the spinal cord completely. You will die. If Alistair dies, we're dead anyway," she snapped. "Get me the wheelchair. I saw one in the corner. Take me to the balcony." "My lord gave me strict orders." "I am the reincarnation, aren't I?" Anna bluffed, channeling the authority Alistair had looked at her with. "If I am his queen, then you obey me, Doctor. Take me to the balcony, now." Sterling swallowed hard, nodded, and lifted her frail body into the antique wheelchair. He pushed her to the French doors and threw them open. The wind was howling, carrying the scent of ozone and copper. Below, the courtyard of the manor was a battlefield. It was a massacre. The Shadow Guard, Alistair's elite soldiers, were clashing with a horde of feral vampires in tattered clothes. But in the center of the chaos, two figures danced a deadly waltz. Alistair moved like a streak of moonlight, his sword, a blade of pure silver, flashing. He was fighting a giant of a man. Victor Vulov was massive, clad in heavy armor made of bones, wielding a warhammer that cracked the pavement with every swing. "Give me the girl!" Victor roared, his voice sounding like grinding stones. "Give me the sun-blood thorn! I will drink her dry and become a god!" "You will choke on your own ambition, Victor!" Alistair shouted back. He lunged, slashing Victor's arm, but the wound closed instantly, sealed by dark green magic. Victor laughed. He slammed his hammer onto the ground, and a shock wave of green energy rippled outward. It caught Alistair mid-stride. Anna screamed as she watched Alistair fly backward, smashing into a stone fountain. The stone crumbled. Alistair didn't get up immediately. "No!" Anna yelled, her voice lost in the storm. Victor marched toward the fallen king. "You are weak, Alistair. You care for the cattle. You fell in love with the food. That is why you will lose." Victor raised the hammer for a killing blow. Alistair was struggling to rise, blood pouring from his temple, his regenerative abilities slowed by the dark magic. Anna looked at her hands. She remembered what Sterling had said. "Your blood is lethal to them. It's solar power." She looked around the balcony. There was a heavy stone gargoyle loose on the railing. She couldn't walk, but her arms were strong from years of carrying heavy trays. "Sterling," she whispered, "push me to the edge." "Miss Vance, do it." Sterling pushed the wheelchair to the railing. Anna grabbed the loose stone gargoyle. It weighed at least 40 pounds. She gritted her teeth, adrenaline flooding her system, overriding the pain in her ribs. Below, Victor raised the hammer. "Hey, ugly!" Anna screamed. Victor paused, looking up. Anna heaved the stone gargoyle over the edge. Gravity did the rest. The stone plummeted 3 stories and crashed directly onto Victor's shoulder, shattering the bone armor and throwing him off balance. The distraction was all Alistair needed. With a roar that shook the foundations of the house, Alistair surged up. He didn't use his sword. He used his claws. He drove his hand into Victor's chest, ripping through the bone armor and tearing out the warlord's black, rotten heart. Victor crumbled to dust instantly. Silence fell over the courtyard. The remaining Vulov soldiers, seeing their leader dead, fled into the night. Alistair stood panting, covered in dust and black blood. He looked up at the balcony. He saw Anna, sitting in the wheelchair, wind whipping her hair, looking fierce and terrified. He smiled weakly, then his eyes rolled back in his head, and the vampire king collapsed. The medical wing was silent, except for the beeping of monitors. Alistista lay on the gurney next to Anna's. He was dying. The green magic from Victor's hammer was a necrotoxin. It was eating his cells faster than he could heal. His skin was grey, cracking like dry porcelain. "There's nothing I can do," Sterling said, his voice breaking. "The poison is ancient. It requires a transfusion of pure, potent power to flush it out, but his body is rejecting the blood bank supplies." Anna lay on her bed, staring at the man who had saved her. He looked so small now, stripped of his immortality. "Use me," Anna said. Sterling turned to her. "What? Miss Vance, I told you your blood is fire to vampires. It could kill him instantly." "He said he was the primordial," Anna said, her voice steady. "He said he was the only one strong enough to handle me. If he doesn't drink, he dies, right?" "Yes." "Then do it. Hook us up." Sterling looked at her, then at his dying king. He nodded solemnly. He prepped the transfusion line, inserting the needle into Anna's arm and connecting it to Alistista's. "This will hurt," Sterling warned. "The resonance, it will be violent." He opened the valve. Anna watched her dark red blood flow down the tube. It entered Alistista's vein. For a moment nothing happened. Then Alistista's back arched off the table. A low, guttural growl ripped from his throat. His veins began to glow, not red, but gold. Bright, molten gold. The light spread under his skin, burning away the grey necrosis. But the connection went both ways. Anna gasped as a jolt of icy electricity shot up her arm. It wasn't pain, it was power. It was 600 years of strength, magic, and immortality rushing back into her system. The room began to vibrate. The glass jars on the shelves shattered. "It's a feedback loop," Sterling yelled, shielding his eyes. "They are metabolizing each other. I have to stop it." "No!" Alistista's voice boomed. He sat up, ripping the IVs out of his arm. His eyes were blazing with golden fire. He didn't look at Sterling. He looked at Anna. He moved to her bedside. He didn't look weak anymore. He looked like a god of war reborn. "Anna," he breathed. "Did it work?" she whispered. "Are you okay?" "You saved me," he said, "but you did more than that." He pulled the sheet back from her legs. "Look." Anna looked down. Her legs, they were glowing. The same golden light that was in Alistista's eyes was pulsing through her shattered spine, knitting bone back together, fusing nerves, repairing the impossible. The heat was intense, like sitting too close to a bonfire. She gasped, clutching the rails of the bed. Can you feel that?" Alistista asked. "It burns," she cried. "Good," Alistista said, grabbing her hand. "Pain means life. Numbness is death. Feel it, Anna. Claim it." The light flared one last time, blindingly bright, and then faded. Anna lay panting, sweat soaking her hospital gown. The room was quiet. "Move your foot," Alistista commanded softly. Anna closed her eyes. She focused on her right foot. She pictured the signal traveling down her spine, past the scar, down to her toes. Twitch. She opened her eyes. Her big toe had moved. Sobs broke from her throat. She tried again. She flexed her ankle. She bent her knee. I can feel them," she wept. "I can feel the sheets on my skin." Alistista didn't smile. He leaned down and kissed her, a searing, desperate kiss that tasted of iron and lightning. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. "I told you," he whispered, "I would tear the heavens down to fix you. Turns out I just needed to let you save me." 6 months later, the Rusty Spoon Diner was under new management. In fact, the entire block had been bought out by a mysterious holding company called Thorn Industries. Anna Vance walked out of the front doors of the Seattle Art Museum, where her new gallery exhibition, Shadows and Rain, was opening. She wore a backless emerald dress that showed off the faint golden scar running down her spine. a mark of survival. She walked down the stairs in high heels, her stride confident, powerful and graceful. Waiting at the curb was the matte black Aston Martin. Marcus held the door open. "Good evening, my queen," Marcus said. "Good evening, Marcus." She smiled. Inside the car, Alistair was waiting. He took her hand, kissing the knuckles. He looked at her with that same intensity he had on the rainy roadside, but the sadness was gone. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Anna looked out the window at the city that used to chew her up and spit her out. Now it belonged to her. "Not yet," she said, her green eyes flashing with a hint of gold. "I'm hungry. Let's go hunting." Alistair grinned, his fangs glinting in the streetlights. "As you wish, my love." The car peeled away into the night, leaving nothing but rain and silence in its wake. Wow, talk about a cliffhanger. Who is Anna, really? Is she actually the reincarnation of his wife? Or is there something even more magical about her bloodline? And who is Kyle, the human boyfriend who set her up? Alistair is about to go on a rampage, and you do not want to miss what happens when the Vampire King goes to war for the woman he loves. If you are enjoying The Vampire King's Found Love, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when Anna wakes up in the king's bed and the hunt for her attackers begins. Comment Vampire King below if you want the next part immediately.